Something that you said about physically turned on when a woman sees a man could die for her is one of the most disgusting and heinous things I think I've ever heard in my life. I don't know about you, but I actually love men enough. I want them to be alive. Bitch, he's your man.
Would I throw my baby son in the way of a bear? That's honestly retarded. I don't know how you get from point A to point B. Also, I'm pregnant. I don't know anyone else who's married and pregnant on this panel. So like maybe that's why you're so dysfunctional and online calling into a panel right now. Maybe you just suck.
What the bitch? You dumb.
If you're going to have polarity in a relationship, hopefully long term, because that's what I kind of hope for. If you're going to have polarity, like you might want to be more on the masculine side of things as a man, and as a woman, you might want to be more on the feminine side of things. And just to have that yin and that yang, that push and that pull.
Yeah, I agree that things have emerged through all of human history in these ways these gender roles are. I'm not going to disagree. That's obviously true. But I think there are two things that uniquely challenge that today, and that's birth control and education, such work. I think that these things have fundamentally altered a woman's relationship with sex and fundamentally altered her engagement with the world. And now we're seeing that maybe some of those old roles that emerged aren't really as intrinsic to our sex as we thought they were. Maybe they were intrinsic to our roles in society that kind of followed our sex. But now that women have the ability to without consequence and work a job, it might be that we have to engage with these concepts in a slightly different manner. We can't just assume that all women want to be like submissive and subservient. That might have just been secondary to them not having jobs.
Other than
you think they're somewhat intrinsic? Like you said it's not super intrinsic or not as intrinsic as we thought. But I mean, do you think that biological realities to some extent are always going to inform some level of gender roles, and we just recognizing that could be a good thing?
I think in a perfect world where everybody's treated equally as much as possible, you'd still probably see some differences between men and women. I just think there's nowhere near the exaggeration that they exist today or that people think they exist. But yeah, there's probably going to be some differences for sure. If for no other reason, there's going to be differences in terms of like average strength and like
right. But the average that average strength, for example, right? Like it almost seems to me that we're kind of pushing it beyond what the equilibrium is, right? And then like Ali was talking about in the military, they're literally lowering the standards for women to get more women in the military when that's not where the equilibrium truly is. Like in the name of feminism, they're pushing.
Everybody in here agrees that the changing of those standards for how they would grade you on your Army fitness test, the Army personal fitness test, the changing of those standards is fucking stupid. You either can climb into a plane with a rucksack on or not, or a helicopter. Like you either can or you can't. It doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. Like the grading should be objective for that.
Right, and that's one example of like society pushing. I mean, I can think of it as we keep talking, but that was the one that came to mind because of what Ali talked about, right? Like this idea of feminism is pushing beyond what the equilibrium is. And in fact, the equilibrium might be that the differences that do exist and should be expressed through gender roles might be greater in certain circumstances than they currently are.
What I mean by other, just to kind of, when I ask for other examples, like other examples of how femininity or feminism has changed, like the standards that we use and apply, that we have push the bar away from the equilibrium that Blacktoid here is talking about in the name of equity or equality. Can you give me some more examples other than the military? Anything else?
Yeah, so I mean, but this is gonna be, we're gonna have to take a little bit of a walk for this one. But leaving women vulnerable to where they are gonna be more at risk of elder abuse because they bought into like this feminist boss babe, independent, single and childless narrative.
If I'm a feminist boss babe, wouldn't I have enough money to hire for end of life care and pay for like a nurse to come in and take care of me because I've been working for decades and investing in my retirement?
Yeah, and that's awesome. And what I recommend to childless women who want to be single and all these other things. And that sounds great until you have Alzheimer's or dementia. And you're going to need people that love you, that you enrich their lives, and they're going to be looking out for you to make sure that you're not being abused. You want your kids or your husband or your nieces and nephews. Doesn't matter which one, you just need to invest that time. You want them to be up the behind of whatever nursing home you end up in. We take our cognition for
absolutely.
granted.
It's important to have family members looking after older people, but it doesn't always necessarily have to be the children. Like there are definitely other options available too.
Yeah, like nieces and nephews. On my husband's side of the family, they have a matriarch. She's an aunt, but you would never guess that she wasn't a grandmother. I thought that she was, but she had just invested so much time in her nieces and nephews. They all take very good care of her. But like what I'm saying when it comes to like how that can be a drawback for feminism, because we're talking about liberating women, that's putting women at risk for abuse, right? And it's like you have a fertile window that takes a sharp hit at 35 And if we're going to be living right now, we're living to 71.1. I anticipate that'll increase. And I think that we'll, if I had to choose, I think we'll probably be living to 90. So if you as a woman choose to be single and or childless, the repercussions of that are going to be 55 years of the rest of your life to 90.
Something real quick, because
Sure.
I think this is actually a counterintuitive thing. I think if you want to increase your chances of being safe as a woman, I think that you have to remain single, because I think that the highest likelihood that a woman ever encounters violence in her lifetime is interpersonal violence in a domestic abuse situation. That's so the best thing you can do is keep a man out of your house. Like the chance of a guy breaking into your house and like violent robbery or whatever, or burglary or stuff like that is pretty low. But I'm pretty sure a decent number, I'd have to Google it, but I thought it was like 30 to 40% of women have experienced like some form of like intimate partner violence in the household. And
you're talking about DV, but I'm talking about how how other ways that feminism can be harmful. I'm saying that there's probably going to be a wave of women that are single and or childless that are at risk for being abused in nursing homes that we haven't seen before. Women are also right now, if you neglect the trans stats, in comparison to men, they're the largest growing demographic of homeless individuals. And I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I'm sorry, I have pregnancy brain right now. I'm trying to remember your name. Genevieve. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Genevieve. Yeah. So I get what you're saying about make the money. Okay. But for some reason, there are, I don't know how much money you're making or anything like that, but women making enough money to retire, that's the minority of women. That's also the minority of people. You know what I mean? So as much as women should be doing this thing, if you're going to be single and childless, you need to put your big girl panties on and you need to go and you need to make that bread. But they're not going to. That's the problem.
Well, I think that's a problem for men as well. I think a lot of people are struggling to have enough of a retirement fund to live comfortably in their old age. And I think that kind of brings us back full circle to something that was brought up in the beginning of the conversation by Stephen, that we have a lot of issues that are affecting both men and women, and this hyperfixation on making it a men versus women kind of a conversation all the time isn't really doing us any favors.
End of life care, to make that a gendered issues would be crazy to me, because if anything, I would expect technically women are always probably going to suffer end of life care, even in a perfect world, because women tend to outlive men anyway, right?
Right.
Women tend to outlive men, and they tend to marry up in age 4 to 5 years too. So you're always setting yourself up to be, yeah.
I guess there's also a stereotype. There's a stereotype that these single childless women also are just living in these cliques of other single childless women. So in that regard, they'd be much better off than a single friendless man, because they'd at least have other found family that they would be able to gain support from too. They're less lonely.
I want to
right.
Go ahead.
But I want to back to elder abuse. This is I have the information pulled up on another slide, but it's common consensus. I say even maybe for the CNC that women are more at risk of elder abuse than males. And I'm not saying that maybe the men aren't being reported or maybe they're not living as long, but women dominate the workforce when it comes to CNAs, and they are low educated, low paid women. I have family members that have been CNAs. I went to college with women who are CNAs. It's not the highest professional status job out there, right? So that's already an issue. It's low education and then low compensation. Aside from that, when they have to choose, let's say that you just happen to be this sociopathic, malicious CNA, are you going to try to beat down a man or a woman? You're probably going to choose a woman. They're smaller because
an old person? They're both equally beatable, downable. I'm
actually so curious. If you were to do a fight between 7-year-old men and women,
I can get there if you let me get there, right? No, older men being strong is true. You can talk to CNAs. They have had fists thrown at them by not mentally cognizant men, and they land hard. Eventually, they do get weak, but in comparison to women, there are still sex differences in old age, that old man strength that we joke about. It's actually true and real. Y'all probably got neighbors out there that are trimming their yard that are 90 years old, but that's not the point. Women are also at risk more so for osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, and dementia. That's what makes them more vulnerable. Aside from the sex differences, those three things, that's going to leave them to be victimized, in my opinion, by low educated, low compensated other women. That's the danger if you don't set up your life accordingly. If you do, amazing, awesome. Do I think that feminism promotes that? I don't think women get practical advice from feminists.
Okay. I think this is a good segue to ask about a tweet you recently, if you don't mind, Allie. Okay. So
Sure.
Recently, because you talked about the importance of having children and things like that, I've seen discuss that on your channel. But recently you tweeted something that I have questions on. And I'm going to read it verbatim here. Surrogacy is evil. Rich women and men rent a poor woman's womb and deprive a baby of the only mother it. Do you care to elaborate on what you mean by that exactly?
Yo, I meant what I wrote. What you mean?
Damn.
I meant what I wrote.
I was
That's what I
excited for
mean.
this turn of conversation here. If we can make it a bit personal just for a moment. I
Yes.
don't have children currently, but I do want biological children at some point. I'm also an endocrine cancer survivor, and that complicates my medical history so that I'm not able to carry a pregnancy to full term. What would you suggest someone in my situation do who wants biological children but doesn't want to be evil according to your standard here?
Don't pull any punches. Go hard.
Well,
Make
I
her
don't
cry.
like, infertility is a common human issue. Like it is what it is. Like you can't. This is what we want to plan for everything. We want to make sure that we can get everything that we want. Like sometimes you don't always get what you want. If you want biological children, there's ways that you can go about it. But then we have to go into the ethics of IVF. Like I still think and maintain that surrogacy is evil. There are things that you can't plan for. You cannot plan for endocrine cancer that you survived, right? So it just is that you're not going to be able to biologically carry children. So how can we live and operate aside from that? We can go for adoption. That's one thing we can do. I think that, if America
adoption
was saying,
is great, and that's definitely something that I do want to consider as well. But I can't deny that I want at least one biological child or more. And then I do plan on fostering and all of that as well. But are you saying, like, in your worldview, I'm just kind of shit out of luck on I got dealt a bad hand, sorry. You had cancer, you had to go through treatment, but you're either evil or you don't get to have kids that are yours biologically.
Yeah. And that doesn't
Would
have
it
to be
also be evil if one of my sisters were my surrogate?
That I don't think so. I think the problem is like the changing of money in hands for labor. Like that's odd.
I would pay them if my sister was my surrogate. I would still pay her.
Wait, just real quick.
I
Then
think
why are you
that's
okay with
weird.
adoption? If that's your problem, why are you okay with adoption? You know that money changes hands in that situation too. Correct?
The kid's already born, though, right? It's a fundamental. You're not renting womb space.
Yeah, and this is usually like upper class women that are renting poorer women's wombs. Like this is modern day slavery that somehow is allowed and continues the commodification of the female body. It doesn't mean that I don't have like empathy for women who are infertile, but why do we have to be like, oh well, you can't have kids, so let's just rent somebody else to have kids for you? Like sometimes you just take L's in life. I had a miscarriage. There wasn't anything that I could do about that. That is life, and that's okay.
We have the medical abilities to intervene in things. I mean, you could use the same argument that I shouldn't have pursued any oncology treatment in that case. Like it's ridiculous to assume that just because I'm privileged and I have access to medical things that other people don't have access to, that I shouldn't take advantage of them or I shouldn't pursue them.
You just said it yourself.
I'm not denying that I'm privileged. There is absolutely a privilege there. 100%.
Yeah, it's an incredible privilege. And I mean, it's absolutely insane. And I suppose, I don't know if this was an option to anyone who has endocrine cancer, but to have like eggs harvested, beforehand, before you get chemo treatment. Like, I don't know what that looks like, but we're just continuing to cheapen the sanctity of life.
Wait,
and that
hold on.
If I had had
how does it cheapen the sanctity of life? If somebody has
are you kidding me? Like, let me
if I had my eggs frozen, I would still need a gestational carrier to carry the pregnancy. The issue isn't my eggs; it's the actual being able to carry full term.
Yeah, well,
I want to hear the sanctity of full life. How is that?
The sanctity of life, like it's a really cheap thing that we have women who, it's not simply because they had like a genetic or a fertility issue or an environmental problem. There are women who simply encountered senescence, old age as a human, and because they didn't plan accordingly, they simply are going to pay another woman to carry a life. That is the only mother that baby knows, and we're just going to completely rip it from them. And that's for the women that are getting surrogacy. That's not even to talk about the gay male couples that are doing surrogates, or same-sex female couples too that are doing surrogates. Like it depends on what you believe, and I believe that children have a fundamental right to a mother and a father. And I don't think.
Wait. Hold on. That second part is irrelevant. Okay, hold on. Because you can have a mother and a father that are adopted too, right? I just don't understand how, if somebody chooses to do the surrogacy thing, I don't see where the cheapening of life comes from, because they've given up essentially the child they've had like to a prearranged adoption. Does that, like, whose life is being cheapened there?
The child and the woman. That takes an emotional toll. Are you like, where are the rich women that are out here being surrogates? We're the millionaire surrogate
women. We're the rich
women
women that are out there working McDonald's. That takes an emotional toll too, right? Obviously, if you're being
That's
compensated
not the
for something
same
like
thing.
that, I never said it was the same thing. But of course, there's going to be some emotional toll. But that's what you're being compensated for, is the emotional toll, right?
Oh, I mean, okay, yeah, we're just gonna pay women for the emotional toll of having a child ripped from their arms.
We pay for
because
emotional
life was
labor all the
unfair.
time.
Yeah, emotional labor is literally like, damn, when you look at like nursing and like or veterinarian work, that's some of the most arduous and emotionally exhausting work that happens in society. No, fuck you. But you guys don't, and I mean, people are compensated for the emotional labor there, right? I guess we can say that like that form of compensation is maybe unethical or whatever, but I think that opens you up more
Unethical.
broadly.
It's immoral.
Yeah, but I mean, then more broadly, you're looking at a lot of different types of transactions that are probably unethical. Like when we talk about like CNAs working with people in old folks' homes, like that job is emotionally fucking exhausting, and those people aren't compensated that well for it. Or working with older patients with dementia, or working with a ton of things that can be emotionally exhaustive. I don't know if we would ever run down that argument and go like, yeah, I think all forms of emotional exhaustion aren't ethical to be compensated for.
I think people love to have these conversations about like surrogacy and abortion, and it's like they haven't, reproduced themselves. I know Destiny is a father, but it's like you get to a point in life where you kind of realize
you're telling me I'm shit out of luck about reproducing.
What do you want me to like? Oh, hey God, hey, look, can you go back in time and hook up Genevieve? Like you get the cards that you're dealt, like, and it sucks. It's not fun.
Well, you're saying simultaneously.
Okay,
right?
then reshuffle the deck. Go pay a poor woman and rent out her womb. Go if you want to. Go do it. It's legal. It's unethical. It's immoral. I don't condone it.
Well, we're trying to figure out why it's unethical or immoral, right? Like you can say,
you're
like,
paying
God,
a woman to use her body, and she's putting her life on the line. Usually for women who didn't plan properly, because infertility, that's a different discussion. We're just like talking about the luxury of it, the constant commodification of the female body. Like nobody's out here trying to like rent. Like it's just
how many people that pursue gestational carriers do you think are doing it just out of pure convenience and not out of any kind of like medical or infertility element?
Even okay, I
that's probably a pretty small group of people at that point, right? Like even Kim Kardashian had a medical reason to use surrogates.
It's still evil. Whether or not you're doing it for infertility or because of senescence, you are still renting out a younger, lower socioeconomic status woman's womb.
But that's not always true. What, like my example of using a sister or a friend or something, I would still pay them. Where's the evilness in that?
What if she's wealthier?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what if she's wealthier? Because you keep saying lower SES. Is that like integral to your argument?
I think that that's probably what's happening here.
Yeah, but
so it's like this upper middle class
only
liberals that are using the lower SES people to,
I want to pay $1 million to have Hillary Clinton deliver my fucking future child, okay? Would that be unethical?
I mean, that's just like, I don't know if you guys like to work with those examples, but I don't typically work with those kinds of examples.
The problem is that
it'd be so weird that it'd be unethical. I would think.
Well, no. I think the issue is that you're saying something is fundamentally unethical or evil, but in your example, you're depriving multiple people of liberty. You're telling one woman she's not allowed to sell her services in that way, and you're telling another woman she's not allowed to purchase a service in that way. So you've got two consenting adults that want to engage in a transaction that should only be their business, and you want to interject and say, actually, that mutually consensual transaction, that's unethical. That's a pretty high bar that you're setting for whatever the unethicality is. So we need to have like some reason for why it's unethical. I think the ball is in your court to say, like, even though both these adults are consenting and they're of age, they're not minors, they're fully within their rights to do whatever they want, it's still unethical. The ball is in your court to say why.
It could, because it's like this constant cheapening of the sanctity of life. Okay, so we see this here because I think about the slippery slope. Okay, so like we can talk about like renting a surrogate.
Hold on, wait. If you just said you wouldn't deal with our examples earlier, you can't appeal to slippery slope now. You need to say why this is.
These are things that have happened. These are things that have happened. This is a slippery slope that has occurred. Okay, so like we've cheapened the sanctity of life to where we're like, like we could just rent out another woman's womb. I'm sure it's been done in human history. Don't get me wrong. But like I think that it's getting really, really strange right now when we have women who are like past their fertile window. They're just like, well, I could just, I can do this, I can do that. There's all these fail safes for women. That's one cheapening of human life. Another cheapening of human life. Also, we're not considering the child, the freaking kid that's in the womb that knows the mom.
The kid doesn't know the difference. What do you mean?
Yes, they do. My baby in my womb can hear.
Your baby is not even forming memories yet. She doesn't.
No, it doesn't. That's fine. That's
fine.
But she knows my voice.
There are a reason why kids can be adopted at early ages, and parents have to have the talk with like, listen, you're adopted. It's like, oh my god, I didn't know. Unless they have like fucking green eyes or some shit, right?
There's still problems that come from that. Even if you adopt a 6-month-old, there's issues from that. Okay, but aside from that, right? That's like a cheapening. Then we have abortion, right? Where we can just terminate. If you spend enough time talking to multiple women that are pro-choice, it just comes down to like, well, when I feel like it is when I should be able to terminate. the consequence of abortion logic has trickled down to medical assistance in dying. We in the West just don't have an appreciation for the sanctity of life. And the conversation, like the surrogacy conversation plays into that. So we keep just trying to find ways to commodify and play God. And then we're going to like sit here and whine about the consequences of it after the fact.
You can't,
Humanity.
You're begging the question on so many of these things that are, like you say, like, because you keep saying things that don't mean anything. Like, oh, like playing God. When we give type 1 diabetics insulin,
it means nothing to you.
God. No. It means nothing to you either, right? Because if you go and have birth and you get an epidural, is that playing God? Or if you've got somebody that's getting insulin, is that playing God? Or we've got somebody on the panel that's had oncology treatments, has had chemotherapy or radiation. Is that playing God? Like we play God all the time in a ton of different ways, right? Your face doesn't
You're just
look
drawing
like
the line about where it's
yeah, like your face. You've got makeup on your face. My hair is not naturally blue. Like we alter human experience and existence and medical outcomes and everything all the fucking time. There are a lot of babies that shouldn't live that do because of like neonatal treatments we have. Like we play God in all sorts of different ways. The onus is on you to say why it's wrong. You can't just say like it's wrong because it's playing God, because we play God in all sorts of different ways.
I don't think that any of the examples you gave can be compared to a human life that is its own human life with its own unique DNA sequence. I don't think these are the same thing. And I think
the medical example absolutely is, because if I didn't have medical intervention and play God with my treatments, then that's my life that wouldn't be here.
There's no other human that was involved in that, right? Like we're breaking down.
But if we're talking about the safety of life and we want to just let it be in God's hands, then we shouldn't ever intervene in these situations.
I'm talking about a human life with potential. You guys are talking about like unrelated medical interventions, and I'm explaining how like this logic has leaked out.
I'm
in
also
other ways
talking
in
about a human life,
not like a separate. Like, where's the baby?
Well, can I ask then, Allie? So, you have your husband. He passes out. He doesn't have a DNR or anything. You don't know. Just flow with me in this hypothetical, please. You have to make a medical decision for him in aftercare. You are making decisions, medical decisions, to affect another human life that might be deleterious. They might have bad consequences. Are you just not going to choose to save the person you love because maybe there's going to be some pain down the road? Like that's playing with another human life, is it not?
Yes, but I was
specifically
talking about babies. Now, my husband's life.
What age is it okay to play with a human life?
I don't think we're being reasonable here. We're comparing somebody who's in an accident that was out of their control, right? We're comparing that to a new human life with potential. However, if my
husband, have control over that,
I am answering his question. I'm answering his question. So if the doctors tell me that my husband still has human potential, because they're going to tell me if there's like brain death or not, if they tell me that he still has human potential, then I'm going to make decisions to extend his life. But if they're looking at me and they're telling me that he's brain dead, he wouldn't want me to extend his life. Like that's the difference. It's about potential, and we're nailing down human life and its potential and its value down to convenience. And we can see that in other ways. Like why does the palliative care conversation even end up entering majority of the time when I talk about things like abortion or surrogacy? Like it's just cheapening human life. Like I don't know what to say about that. I mean, but WhickTV could chime in because I feel like maybe we share similar things here.
This is a topic that it's kind of your opinion. I'm going to let you go ahead and roll with it.
Wow, Wick.
I think that there are like things that are, manipulative or, we can think of things that involve like using people and, or can be manipulative in other ways. Like I think sex work is a great example. I'm not super sold on the whole surrogacy thing though. I'm sorry. As long as it's a child being born, I can't as long as the child has a good home and is being cared for and has that initial mother son or daughter bonding at the beginning couple months. It seems like you're respecting the life at that point, right?
You're talking about like you would be okay with surrogacy because it's bonded with the mom initially or something like that?
Yeah, as long as the kid was because the issue here is like broken houses, right? If the kid is coming up in a terrible house, regardless of surrogacy or a natural birth or anything like this, I think this would be the problem. But if you have a child born to like a surrogate mother, and then basically given to like the mother right away, and the mother takes care of the kid, breastfeed the kid, builds a bond there throughout the first 5-6 months or to a year or 3 years of their life, it would seem to me like the critical part of motherhood is sort of accomplished. So
this is, no, Like what the
Ooh,
hell?
destroyed.
Like
You sound pretty
what?
feminine right now, lactoid. Haha, got him.
I don't even, here's the thing, like you get the first 5 years of life to, permanently set this child up and give them a foundation. Whether you adopt children that are born, a couple months after, or, like 6 months or like several years down the road, they still have like trauma and attachment issues, and adoptive parents don't even find out until like sometimes several years down the road, if that. So like there's still damage being done. My perspective is, why do we even need to do the surrogacy? And we don't need to inflict this pain on children. Like that sounds like child abuse to me.
So, and this is where I'm totally open to being convinced. Like, I've seen a lot of empirical evidence on why single parent households are bad. I haven't really seen any evidence that surrogacy has these same issues. I'm not trying to go hard at you. I'm just saying.
I think the issue is that if you're talking on a spiritual level, I think that the issue is that there is like a fundamental role that a woman has in bringing a child into this world. And it starts at the moment of conception, and it doesn't end at delivery. It goes all the way to the death of, unfortunately, the child, or ideally the mother, right? That there's this whole thing in parenting that's involved in creating and birthing and raising and having a child. And that when we try to put too many things in between that process, that we cheapen the overall integrity of the process by making it hyper convenient at different points. So like in the same way that you might cheapen the process of raising a child by giving them an iPad all the time, you might cheapen the process of motherhood by offloading all of the labor onto somebody else that like economically would choose otherwise. I think it's like the argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's not like it's an option for your average woman. You know what I mean? Like these are typically wealthy women that are doing this thing in the first place. It is cheap. Right? I mean, here's the thing. When we can do some celebrity examples. Priyanka Chopra, she's older, married to Nick Jonas, I think. She wanted surrogacy, not because she was infertile or anything like that. She made it very well known that she's fertile. Their schedules simply did not match up with her ovulation window. That's cheap. If you don't have, like, if you are not even willing to go through what it takes to, like, labor and have a child, and you have the ability to, it seems really weird that you'd rent somebody out for that. You know what I mean? Like, adoption, obviously very valid thing, but also, like, we are still neglecting that there is a possibility that children in these circumstances are being abused. They're being like ripped from the arms of a mother.
We would just need like some kind of empirical evidence of that. Like, are children born to surrogacy having like these huge traumatic issues? Like, my guess is the outcomes for them are probably way better than the norm because it's parents that are electing to have them via surrogacy who are wealthy and everything too. Like, these are probably the children of the best. It's kind of like I think children tend to do better in gay households because you have to adopt, and it's the idea that you have to jump through so many hoops to go through the adoption process that just by default, like those children are going to end up doing better, not because gay parents are better, but just because of the selection process involved.
In the same way, yeah, you have to want this child so badly that you're going through all of these other obstacles to bring them into the world. There's good chance that you're also going to be taking steps to make sure that they have all the resources they need to grow up in a happy and healthy way.
So we mentioned
it's not the same. Like I've actually. Yeah, no, it's not the same. Like I've actually been pregnant. Like they go through things and they go through fears too, but there's certain things that they're not going to experience. And again, like I still think adoption is valid. This is not to negate adoption. I'm specifically talking about surrogacy. They don't know what that is to bear that physical toll with that baby inside of them. That's a lot of psychological, emotional, well, that would be the same thing as psychological. It's a lot of emotional and physical expenditure and bonding that they're not having with that child. And how many women are we seeing? And it's not like it's the masses, but there have been enough women that are surrogates that come out on TikTok and talk about these awful experiences that mirror experiences when like the wealthy used to adopt, when things were like way crappier regulation wise, where they kind of let them know like, hey, you're staff. This is our baby. Like one TikTok that I just recently saw with a surrogate, they wanted the mother to wait for labor. And she said, no, I can't wait for labor. I have to induce because the baby their life is going to be threatened. And the surrogate couple was upset with her. Or there was another picture that I saw.
All of us would be opposed to that though, right? Obviously, every single person here would be opposed to a surrogate mother being forced to carry somebody in an unhealthy condition.
Right. But like we see these examples that I simply need not be. There's other examples where we see like two gay men, they're taking a picture in the labor bed with the newborn baby. Why are they in the labor bed in the first place? They didn't give birth in that bed. They had to like, like there's a certain level of perversion that is here, and that's the cheapening of the sanctity of human life. There's larger consequences. I'm not thinking about it just like as an isolated incident. I'm thinking about like the future societal implications of it. And I think that's often what gets neglected, I want to say by the left, is unintended consequences. Because if we commodify here, what are we going to see in the future? Because surrogacy, at the way that it's being conducted now, is relatively new. So, like, I don't, it's going to take a while to have the data on it. But I would wager to bet that it's probably going to be a negative impact in humanity. I don't know if it's going to be overall, but we'll have to wait and see.
Can I ask? So you mentioned something earlier, and correct me if I misheard or I was wrong or whatever. But you seem to say that surrogacy cheapens womanhood or cheapens something like that, to that effect, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'd ask 𝙎𝙬𝙗𝙧𝙚 as well to chime in, or the other two if you want. Like, what else has modern society done to cheapen, in your opinion, womanhood? Like, what other examples other than surrogacy think of? Like, we could go on surrogacy all night, I think, if we want, but I do want to kind of broaden the discussion a little. What do you think, 𝙎𝙬𝙗𝙧? Why don't you put you back on Team Allie, maybe? What do you think?
Ways in which society has cheapened women?
Yes, cheapened womanhood, specifically. Femininity, womanhood. You mentioned pornography earlier?
Yeah, there's a different argument for that. I do think that perhaps, maybe not, I won't go down like the surrogacy route, but perhaps these sort of, to some extent, the sort of cultural discouragement of motherhood as opposed to like career success. I think that that does somewhat cheapen the unique experience of women. I think pornography is manipulative as well as sex work, but for other reasons. I actually think it's more manipulative against men. But yeah, yeah, like drug dealers, for example. But that's a whole different conversation we can have.
Fair enough. Okay. Would you agree with that, Madam Genevieve, that society is pushing careers on women is cheapening your womanhood? Do you think, first of all, do you think that's happening? And second of all, do you think it's actually cheapening your your femininity? What do you think?
I definitely don't think so. I think that, I guess, there's a lot of appeal in having a job and having a career and making your own income. So does that mean that it's being pushed on us? I don't know. It's pretty appealing to have your own bank account and to be able to buy stuff when you want to and know that you're not counting on someone else to keep a roof over your head. I think that's ultimately why most women have decided to pursue careers. I don't think it cheapens their womanhood at all. I think if anything, it gives them more security and resources to then explore like their true passions and things that they actually are interested in.
Me?
Anyone who wants to respond can. Like,
like, do jobs cheapen womanhood? No, jobs don't cheapen womanhood, right? Like, I think the thing is you were saying earlier that it feels good to have your own money or something like that. There's some women that are completely okay with depending on good men. That's like a perspective to have. And I think we often have this boogeyman when it comes to women, that if they get married and financially depend on a man, that they're going to be out there on their behinds. We've got tons of charities. That's one aspect. And the other thing too is if you were a stay-at-home wife and mom or mom, you stand to benefit way more in divorce court than if you were employed. But as for like, a job, a profession making a woman masculine, that's not true. Like a Proverbs 31 woman, if you want to get biblical about it, she worked, she just kept the family as a priority. And men should be keeping the family as the priority as well. Like that's not healthy for anybody. Aside from that, I think American women just want to look for all kinds of different excuses about why they can't be, functional in a relationship. Like, I can't be feminine for you because I have this job. Like, that doesn't make any sense. There's lots of women that work and still treat their men like men.
I guess to elaborate a little bit more what I said, I'm not necessarily talking about like jobs in general. I had brought up in a discussion yesterday with somebody, I brought up all the stats that show that, especially after following birth, being home with the child and breastfeeding is recommended by the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics consistently for both the physical and emotional well-being of the child. And I brought up how that is a reason, right? That could be a reason why motherhood is something that should be done, I guess. And the very first response I got was, well, that's going to increase the wage gap. Right, that's going to mean that women are taking breaks from their career, not making as much money. The fact that was the response, I think, is sort of what I'm pointing to where the value that is there is sort of kind of being put aside for some kind of greater feminist narrative, or like this sort of idea of, well, we have to like get the wage gap all the way 100%. And we're willing to sacrifice what's best for our children to do so. I think that does cheapen motherhood to some extent, personally.
Where we get off thinking that we need it all. We got to have it all. The world has to give us it all. We've already been relieved of the miracle of the burden of childbirth. Okay, so we have like birth control. We have economic autonomy. It's like nonsense to me. How much more do women want, right? And the alternative perspective too that gets forgotten, because women just aren't having kids. Okay, 50.1% of women in the UK are childless by age 30. That's unprecedented. Childbearing ends at some point. Right? You will have a second half of life, and you're probably going to want to work, unless you're just going to be shuffling your kids around, taking them to different like events, sporting events, what have you. A lot of women end up, working either from home or out there in the regular workplace after they raise children. But, I think that we lack that perspective because we're just not really doing it a whole lot. And also women who decide to take a break from the job market and have children, they are not often out here streaming. Like, there's a reason why there's not a whole lot of conservative moms online. It's because they have stuff to do. Same thing with conservative fathers as well.
Conservative moms are definitely online. They're just all on Facebook sharing horrible memes with each other, to be fair.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to be mean. Like maybe the decent ones. You know what I mean? Like all the moms that I respect in real life and socialize with who raise their own kids, they're not online to this capacity or this degree.
Do you not respect streamers? That's actually the most base thing you've said. Fair enough.
Oh,
Lactoid, I want to.
I got Wi-Fi. That's all it is.
Lactoid, I'm curious what your thoughts are on guaranteed paid parental leave. You're obviously in support of parents being able to spend time with a newborn. Do you think that should be something that's guaranteed?
This is a situation in which I have kind of two principles that collide, where in a perfect world, yes, like I would want that, and I would want there to be cultural sort of structures and social structures that encourage people to do that and support people doing that. But that sort of conflicts with like other opinions I have as it comes to government spending, taxation.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I would be opposed to those policies, but I agree that,
despite the fact that you stated earlier that you are in support of all of the studies and you agree with the fact that it's best for everyone involved.
Yeah, no, it is, right? And so the question is, I mean, if we want to get like really libertarian with it, like how much money can we steal to do this good thing? I would kind of step away from that. I don't want to make it a libertarian, like, taxes theft meme discussion. But I mean, that's the reason why. That's the only reason why I'd be opposed to it.
You want women to fulfill the role of womanhood, but you don't want to create a society that allows them to comfortably do that.
Well, no, I don't want to use coercion to make it so. I would rather it be that we have a culture thus that men wouldn't just leave, right? And I think this is like, when we're talking before, when it was brought up,
regardless of whether or not the man leaves, a lot of women don't have guaranteed paid leave after they give birth. Like, they're at risk of losing their job, whether or not the father is in the picture.
Sure. And so we should recognize, though, that like if that doesn't happen, that's a good thing. But there's always a trade-off. How much are we willing to do to force a good thing to happen? There's certain things I'm not willing to do if the offset is not sufficient enough. And I'm not sure it is.
I want to ask, there's another tweet, Allie. Sorry to pick on you a little bit.
No, it's okay.
There's another tweet you made about how sexual liberation has been a horrible failure. I don't have that tweet up right now, but
yeah,
that's the gist of it, right?
Oh yeah, I can't imagine, because if you're a forward thinker, right? Not everybody's gonna have, not everybody just has that personality type. I've always been a forward projector, so. Like, that's what I'm saying. I constantly talk about, like, the slippery slope of the things that happened. So I'm just trying to think. If you're a logical thinker who can project, and the sexual liberation movement comes on the scene, and you're like, women can sleep with whoever they want, whenever they want. There's no consequence of pregnancy. They're probably not going to vet the men as much as they would if they had more skin in the game. And it's possible that a small pool of men who lack morals might take advantage of this opportunity. Like, you might have been thinking in your head, this sounds like a horrible idea, right? So I think in my mind, it probably only sounded like a good idea to the ignorant, degenerates, and hopefuls. There's the only way that sounded like a good idea.
I don't even know if this idea of a small pool of men, this weird hypergamy thing, I don't know if that even exists, actually. I've taken that at face value from red pillars for a long time. I don't think there's ever been any data or study to support that ever. I think people draw really weird predictions off of like Tinder, where it's like 5-to-1 men to women, which is a bad environment to compare anyway. But my guess is going to be that the more degenerate society you're talking about, probably the easier it is for the average dude to get laid, because there's not as much consequence there for a woman having sex with a person.
Yeah, I think men want us to be sexually liberated as women, but you're talking about like the small pool of men. So I'm just talking like if I look at hypergamy, I don't look at it just based off of swiping on apps or anything like that. I think about, is it attractive? Yes or no question. If a man is in the top of his field for a competence hierarchy. Because you can have a competence hierarchy in multiple fronts these days, because we're past the Industrial Revolution. So I think just like if you set yourself apart as a man in a group of men, then yeah, women might have a proclivity to want to be more romantic with you or to select you. So that's like my understanding of hypergamy. I know that these guys pontificate a lot about dating stats, but that also only holds true to people that use dating apps in the first place. So yeah.
Sure, but I'm just saying if there was a huge tie-in to there being like a big consequence for sex for a woman, if you're, or I guess, wait, I don't even know what you disagree with then. Because it sounded like you were saying for the average guy, this might be a worse sexual environment, but I don't think that's the case. It's probably a better sexual environment if you're just looking to get laid.
I mean, I think there's hope for sexless men more so now. Like, I don't think men lose with sexual liberation is kind of my thing, right? Because a lot of guys in my chat, well, I can get there, but a lot of guys in my chat, and it's just cheapening womanhood again, and sexuality again, spirituality. Like, what's the point of being a person if you can buy everything about me? But like even men in my chat, sometimes the incels, they'll come out and they'll say, well, I didn't benefit from the sexual liberation movement because like women don't want me. That's not true. Like, can you or can you not get porn on your phone at a moment's notice? Like, you have benefited from sexual liberation. Now, it's like it can be a hindrance for the majority of men out there, but they benefited to some kind of degree. So I just don't view that to be a dub for women. I view that to be like a huge L. Louise Perry, she's a feminist herself, and she's come out and said that this stuff is trash because like the men that are worth mating with no longer want to commit to us. And so like we're accepting these situationships as women because we'd rather have the guy than be without him. And it's nonsense. We're not even like good negotiators either, because a lot of women probably could negotiate like a more commitment or a marriage out of these guys, but they're just unlikely to do so. I just don't think sexual liberation benefited women. That's just my opinion.
I would agree, but I don't think it particularly benefited men either. I think pornography is like a pretty massive detriment on men. I do agree, like it cheapens it cheapens sexuality, I think, generally speaking. It sort of put the focus on people to sort of have kind of cheap, fleeting experiences as opposed to trying to achieve some kind of, for lack of a better word, glorious end goal of something more important than just chasing a high, which essentially that's what casual sex is.
So what about the rest of you? You think pornography? Let's focus on that for a little bit. Sexual liberation in general, do you think it's made the world a better place for you, Madam Genevieve, now that you're sexually liberated, or do you think you've taken an L here?
For me, it's a major win, obviously. For me individually, and for a lot of women that I know, the ability to choose who I have sex with, when I have sex with them, is, I mean, that's just major. I'm obviously a big proponent of bodily autonomy, and that flies right in line with it. I don't see how that could possibly not be a win for women. It just seems so obvious to me. I'm lack at even explaining how the ability to have choice could possibly be a bad thing.
What, like, women could choose who they slept with before?
Well, a lot of times, if we're looking at like
Saudi Arabia,
men setting up marriages for their daughters is something that happened in the United States as well.
And how are women doing choosing their marriages now? How's that going?
Regardless
of
of whether
worse for women now than it used to be, or
I'm implying that there's just like a possibility that it was helpful when we had a father in the home that he vetted the men. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. Like, we just have a bigger burden
what is the
now.
What is the, how are you evaluating that it was better?
I mean, I don't have like objective metrics about it. It's just my opinion and position. And lots of women share, well, on my side
Well,
of
but we
things.
no, well, but you have to,
Yeah.
even if it's subjective, there's some subjective evaluation. Like if I say I think it's better to have 3 doors in my house instead of 1, you're gonna say why, and it's like, well, it's just subjective. Like, well, no, you probably
No,
want more entrances
well,
to the house.
okay,
I'm like,
like,
so why do you think it's better
yeah.
for men to vet the partners rather than women?
I think men are more logical thinkers in a sense. I mean, if you're a father, you know what I mean? Like, why do we have this idea that fathers were evil or mean and didn't want the best for their daughters? And like, what I'm saying is, how do you think
Hold on, you're
choosing?
just real quick. You're normatively loading everything. So I asked, like, what's the best thing? You go,
Okay.
well, they chose the best thing. What is the best thing? Well, it's the father knows what's the best thing. What does the father know the best thing? What is the like? What are the things that we're selecting for? Like, what
Oh,
traits? What particular things do we think the father is
yeah,
selecting for that the
yeah.
woman is too stupid to select for? That's what I'm asking about.
Okay, okay. So like when women are young, we have a hard time differentiating between competent fearlessness and then fearless recklessness, I believe it's called. So like if a man is just confident where he's like faking the funk, we'll buy into it when we're young because we just think that that's so impressive. Right. Whereas our fathers probably would have been able to see through that and say, you know, he talks a big game, but he doesn't actually have the receipts for it. When women get older, we're able to see through that a little bit better. And we're able to choose mates based off of that if we still have opportunity. But like, we just have this constant lens about how fathers used to be or were or even are today, that they're malicious and oppressive and that they wouldn't consider their daughter when they chose these mates. Have there been bad things that happened in arranged marriages? Absolutely. Right. And I wouldn't say that like, you know, that overwhelmingly happened in the United States of America.
Yeah,
But I'm not sure that women are doing that well with the men that they're choosing of their own volition. And now, if you have a father, because you still choose as a woman, right? Now, if you have a father, he chooses, if he vets your husband for you, you can ask for that. You know what I mean? So it's more of a collaborative effort.
Yeah,
But
this is like one of
yeah.
those. This is one of those cases where I have no idea how this ever ends up as gendered. Right? When we say things like fathers know better than their daughters, that's just such a weird. Why not just say like parents will probably know more about their children's partners than the children will? That seems to be ubiquitously true. A father is going to know more than his son about a particular partner.
Yeah.
A mother is going to know more than her son about a particular partner.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how this ends up as like a gender thing. But also, a
Mm-hmm.
parent's feedback on a particular thing might be is way different than a parent selecting a mate, right? Like
Yeah.
I imagine parents are always going to be giving feedback. They always do because they're parents. They can't help it. But the thing is there might be traits that the father selects for that the daughter doesn't necessarily want. Right? Like parents select for careers that their children don't want, right? For parents pushing children into like being lawyers or doctors and their children would rather do something else. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's always good to solicit feedback from parents. I don't think anybody, like an older person is almost always going to know better than a younger person what's good for them in some regards. But I don't think that gets us any closer to like having old style like arranged marriages or parents actually like picking your partner for you.
Mm-hmm. I just think that it's the common notion that that was just always inherently oppressive, as if it's not possible that fathers had the best interests of their daughters in mind. You know, whether or not mistakes were made. Now, like if abuse happens, that's an entirely different conversation because I have seen women who had arranged marriages and they came out and there was abuse and the parents were like, well, you know, we're not going to help you escape the situation. And I think that that's crazy, right? But that was more so the point that I was making is that it's a bias to just assume that men were choosing not, you know, helpful, beneficial mates for their daughters.
Well,
I'm sure that they loved their daughters.
Yeah, I don't think that was.
I'm
Go ahead,
that
Madam
wasn't my
Jillian.
point
Yeah.
that fathers are always going to make a choice for their daughter without considering her best interest. I think the majority of parents want what's best for their children as a general rule.
Okay.
Regardless, even in a scenario where a father or parents arrange a marriage with somebody who is an upstanding citizen who is not abusive, that doesn't mean that they're going to be the ideal partner for the other person in the marriage. It could still be a very unhappy, unfulfilling, unsatisfying, depressing experience, even if there's no abuse, because maybe you just don't have anything in common with that person. Maybe you don't have a good chemistry. Like there are things beyond just, well, they're not going to select somebody who's abusive. Like, yeah, but only the two people involved can really tell if there's chemistry and connection and mutual attraction, and that's why it's important for those two people to be the ones that are making the decision.
Yeah, I guess my question is about how. Sorry, I'll just do this real quick. I'm just
It's fine.
confused about how sexual liberation plays into, you know, like because women are sexually liberated, their fathers stop choosing husbands for them. Like I'm a little bit confused. I don't know the American history of that. I have like a Spaniard history from my own personal like lineage, but I don't understand.
Yeah, look, to the point that if sexual liberation ended child marriages or child arranged marriages, I'm not going to disagree. Do I think sexual liberation did that? I don't think so. But yeah, child marriages are bad. We shouldn't be marrying off kids. We should be letting adults choose who they marry. That's sure baseline. One of the Wick, you asked about pornography, and this is something that I wanted to touch on because so often, and I understand why this happens, but we look at sexual liberation and these topics generally insofar as sort of a gynocentric mentality of how does it hurt women. But I think pornography is something, and sex work, which I think have been contributed to by sexual liberation and I guess revolution. Both of these things, I guess in my mind, I fail to see how they don't hurt men, how they're not manipulative against men, because you literally have people, like in the same way drug dealers do, who are hijacking the reward centers that exist within men, like sort of like the lizard brains, and fueling that in ways that are detrimental to their customers. Drug dealers do the exact same. I mean, in my view, this is a harm. And I haven't really heard any strong, like from that particular element, I haven't heard any strong argument against it. We always and I agree that like sex workers can be manipulated by pimps and higher up people, and that's wrong. But that also exists in the drug trade, right? Like local level drug dealers are often manipulated or controlled by higher level dealers who then go back to the cartel and all this stuff. Sure, but they're still on the ground level manipulating their customers into doing something that's not good for them by hijacking those serotonin and dopamine receptors in your brain. That's not good. It's not a good thing and shouldn't be encouraged.
Does anyone here believe that pornography or sex work has had a positive effect on men, or are we all kind of in agreement that it's...
Yeah, I think it's based. I think it's cool. It's fun to masturbate to things. It's a recreational activity that we have access to today that we didn't have in the past. I think it's cool.
Yeah, and I think sex work provides a lot of value to society, as it always has for like the entire existence of
Can you give me
humans.
an example of that?
But for example, actually, Lactoid, you're mentioning maybe people who have sex addiction or who are pursuing sex work, pornography in an unhealthy way, with completely skating over the other end of the client spectrum, which could be like disabled men, widowed men, elderly men who otherwise don't have any physical touch or sense of intimacy. And there's a lot of positives in providing that to any human. We all benefit from touch and from intimacy.
Very
useful service.
To me, this sounds like, again, like drug dealer apologetics, right? Well, I've talked with these people, right? I've like in my career and online, people who sell drugs. And the first thing is, well, not all of them are addicts, right? But the reality is twofold. First of all, this industry preys and profits off of addicts, right? So every time you contribute to it, you're funding that. You're building up that industry and making it more powerful to take advantage of the addicts. But then on top of that, even for people who are non-addicted, you can't tell me that somebody wouldn't be better suited spending their time and money, especially if they're like a poor person or a working class person, spending that time and money doing things that are, grow themselves as a person, help their family. A lot of times it's married men that are doing this, which is, causes marital strife and infidelity is not a good thing. So I'm taking a look at the whole industry. Yeah, could you find like in a vacuum some perfect man that's actually benefited from doing this? In the same way that perhaps you could find somebody who's genuinely benefiting from like cigarettes, right? If I recall, there's like one stomach disorder where if you smoke, it actually alleviates some of the symptoms. Sure, you can find me like an example, but the reality is for the vast majority of people who are sort of same thing with like smoking or drug use, sort of pushed into buying the service, it doesn't benefit them, right? The studies I've seen indicate that men who purchase sex work consistently rank themselves psychologically lower than other men, and they also rate themselves lower after buying sex work than before buying sex work, right? It increases risk of STDs, it's a financial drain, it's bad on every level.
You're describing every single hobby ever, right? Like, in terms of things that like it profits off of addicts, that's video games. Things where you'd be better spent doing anything else with your time, that's video games. Things where you might feel like shit afterwards, that's League of Legends. You can apply this across so many different. You can apply it to all of gambling. You can apply it to all of watching TV or on like almost everything that this can be applied to. The reality is like all things in life, things have a balance. If you drink too much water, you can die. from having like an imbalance of electrolytes in your bloodstream, right? Obviously, there are going to be some negative things if you engage with something in a negative manner, but just like video games, just like TV, just like movies, just like every form of entertainment, you have to engage with it in a responsible manner. I don't think it's fair to say that this is intrinsic to an engagement with porn. If you're somebody that watches porn, has an orgasm, and goes to sleep, and it doesn't, and you don't like get obsessed with it, then you've had a positive engagement with that hobby. Same way you would with scrolling TikTok or watching TV. Or you can engage with it in a negative way, but I don't think that speaks intrinsically to the harms of the industry.
You know, it is intrinsic. It's just not unique, right? So there are, yeah, I agree with you. You can point to a number of other things. Gambling you brought up. I think gambling is a great example. Gambling is an example that I think is like a predatory industry. You know, you have people who quite literally are trying to figure out how do we get people in and how do we take their money in ways that are disadvantageous to them, things that don't benefit them overall, things that kind of, you know, eat away at important structures in their life and don't make them a better person for it. You could point to things like, you know, so I think drug use is an example, alcohol to some extent, cigarettes, like, yeah, there's plenty of other things. It's not unique to sex work, but sex work is part of this. And I see so often that sex work is sort of like portrayed as a positive when in reality it is a negative. And that doesn't mean like ban it, or that doesn't mean you can't do it, but it means just acknowledge that you shouldn't be doing it and acknowledge that this is somewhat of a kind of disgusting, manipulative industry in the same way like the tobacco industry is, to be honest with you, like a disgusting, manipulative industry.
There's so many things here that you're bringing up that's like, it's just so sad. Like you said, like drug use. Drugs are awesome. There are so many fun drugs you can do and have a fun, yes, they're so cool. There are so many fun drugs you can do and have a responsible engagement with them and have a fun time you can have on a particular drug. You can't have anything else. The idea of writing all of it off because people can abuse it is, I mean, you've listed alcohol and cigarettes here. I mean, some people abuse coffee. There are people, I don't know if this is true of every industry, but in jobs that I've worked, there are people that are fucking assholes in the morning if they haven't had their cup of coffee. If it was a meth head saying, I'm going to treat you like shit until I have meth, people look at them like crazy. But if it's a coffee addict who's like, if I don't have my coffee, I'd be a piece of shit, you're like, oh, that's fine. Like, I think there are tons of drugs, and I would say that's an unhealthy engagement with a drug, by the way. But like, there are tons of things that we can use in positive ways and in negative ways. Just because there are negative things to them doesn't mean that they're intrinsically bad. Again,
look at the aggregate, though. Look at the aggregate. Does coffee on aggregate, you know, maybe you could show me like studies that indicate that on aggregate, coffee is not a good thing for the American populace to be doing. And if you could show that, then I would agree. The coffee industry is like not a good industry, and we probably shouldn't be encouraging it because we should clean ourselves off of this.
I mean, it depends
on the aggregate. Drugs are not good for society. And on aggregate, American society would be better without any drugs.
I mean, it depends on what you mean. Like on the aggregate, I mean, you could probably argue that caffeine's not good, that we should never have it introduced to us ever, that it should only be used sparingly, maybe. But a lot of people like drinking coffee, and a lot of people manage that drug use because it's a way that, you know, makes them happy. And I mean, like, we can argue that we ought to create this pure society where there are no vices whatsoever.
We should strive to that,
no
yes.
recreational thing whatsoever. But I think that's unrealistic, and I think it's untenable. I think that the better thing is probably to say, like, there are going to be some vices, and we should engage with them in a responsible manner. Sometimes drinking is fun. Sometimes doing acid, MDMA, LSD, mushrooms, cocaine, whatever. These things can be fun things to do in occasion. Sometimes having a good cigar can be fun in occasion. But the idea that we're going to get rid of all these things that aren't like consistently self-improving our lives, I don't think is a realistic look for any human being.
I'm not saying get rid of them overnight, okay? And I'm not even, and for the people who have a problem, like I'm perfectly fine with saying, look, you know, you should like tone it down. You should do it more responsibly. But the reality is you would never tell like a non-drinker who's like functional and, you know, don't start drinking, right? You shouldn't encourage people.
Hell yeah.
Oh, okay, sure.
It'll be fucking fun. Yeah.
Sure. So you might, but from what the numbers that I've seen, you know, alcohol is not a good does not provide a good social function for America. These alcohol things simply, no, it doesn't though. When you look at like all the costs associated with it, when you look at the crime that stems from that, when you look at all of the bad things in America that come from drinking, the diseases, the mortality rates, same thing with fast food, same thing with tobacco. These are things that people. Yeah. The benefits are dramatically outweighed by their negatives. This is the same thing with sex work.
You're processing things as Sure, you're processing things as a robot. Like you're giving me like these net negatives, and you're pretending like no positive exists. Like you're completely discounting the subjective fundamental experiences being altered by every person. That there's a reason why people do these things, and it's not just because they love the negatives. It's because there's a lot of positives associated with them as well.
I'm not saying you should be stopped from doing it. I'm just saying it should be discouraged to do things that don't benefit you in the long run. Right? You're literally sacrificing your long-term well-being to satisfy the lizard brain. Right? It's anti-human.
I want to get the other people, the ladies in here, and Ali's been chomping at the bit, so go ahead.
Yeah, Lactoid's been dominating this conversation. Get him out of here. True.
So, you know, hoe's gonna hoe. There's always been hoes. What can you do? Right. They come from broken homes, usually. So, like, we can't really do anything about them. Like, I know that people want to all-out ban, you know, like prostitutes and stuff like that. Very wishful thinking. Super wishful thinking. When it comes to porn, I also believe that something that Christian conservatives will neglect is that it's probably kept a lot more sexless married men in marriages than it's broken up marriages. That's a perspective. I'm not arguing like morality in that sense. And the other perspective that I have on porn is the average age of exposure right now is 11 years old. Parents can't actually advise their children about porn or how easily accessible it is. It's my opinion that maybe one day Pornhub will probably be taken down because I don't think they age verify their actresses, and they're also not age verifying their users. The fact that this is legal
They do
so
age
far,
verify their actresses.
Right. Well, I worked in an adult couple store. I don't think it's that hard to get a fake if you really wanted to.
I also work for one of the
largest
largest adult industry companies in the world, and most of them in this day and age are very good at verifying the age.
And also, if you have to get a fake,
adult.
by definition, there's verification because you need a fake to pass the verification.
They don't verify the users, though, right?
Yeah, right. So they're not verifying the users that are viewing it. That's the other ethical problem that it poses, right? I don't know.
So that's your point. You brought up the actresses, but what you mean is the users.
Well, I mean, are we gonna like pretend like these actresses aren't?
I'm just saying, you're making claims that are not true. You're claiming that they don't verify the age on Pornhub, and that's demonstrably, provably incorrect.
Right. But they had a scandal, did they not? They had a scandal because they weren't age verifying some women that were underage. That was
have they resolved that? Have they resolved that? Your statement is that they do not, which would imply that they.
But it happened.
They have.
There's been a lot. There's been bars that haven't verified correctly. Like everybody has problems with age verification. That's not a reason.
Okay. I was just saying that it's an issue. I was just saying that it was an issue. You know,
it's an issue with everything, but it's not a mark against something. It's not like it's endemic to the industry or it's intrinsic to porn work that they're never going to verify an age. That's
right. I didn't say never. I didn't say
never. I said it was an issue. That's sometimes happens with actresses.
People that are actresses, I don't think have higher rates of like abuse or anything than other people. I don't think that's necessarily true.
That's an absolute false narrative.
Yeah, I'm sure they're like very mentally stable getting ran through on camera, like just the most mentally stable women of all time. Aside from that, the average age of exposure.
You can't just emotion and hand wave it. I mean, the data is the data. I mean,
right. Okay, awesome. Just like the most upstanding citizens who like don't have anything holding them back in life are out there on camera. Sure.
Or like the most upstanding citizens who may think that if they get fucked by too many dicks, they have no value as a human being. Like, who's more mentally sane at that point? Like,
I'm pretty sure sex workers rate pretty low on like mental stability compared to other demographics.
So, like, I'm still kind of on the tip of the average age of exposure being 11.
Sure.
Does anybody care about that?
I know, but yeah, we can get there. But I'm just saying that. Like,
let's talk about not giving children access to technology when they're that young. I think that's a really good option. Let's be more involved, hands-on parents overall. Let's talk about childhood development programs being more accessible for low-income people. There are a lot of things we can talk about here that's not specifically relevant to pornography existing, but rather the fact that we need more involved parents.
Right. We do need more involved parents. They can't catch up to technology. And also parents are very much in denial about these things. I think that is true. If anybody's curious, watch this documentary called Childhood 2.0. My point is the average age of exposure for boys is 11, right? And just based off of that alone, I would just choose to never do sex work as a woman or a man. Both sexes. I would just never do it just because of that age of exposure. And there's no age verification of the user. I still think, that Pornhub scandal did happen. Did they fix it? Yeah, but they had to get caught first, did they not? Right? And there's other women too.
People address problems as it becomes something they're made aware of, and then they can like take steps to resolve it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah.
Porn's just the best, like a problem or some illegal activity, and you find out that it's happening, and you take actions to make it not happen anymore, that feels pretty responsible.
Yeah, like all my friends that are married with PhDs that are women, just like, have the best lives ever raising children. They're on there getting just
true. And what are the wealthiest men in society doing? Taking flights to Epstein Island to go and fuck kids. Like, I mean, come on. Like,
I don't like them either. I'm just saying, like,
you can play the stereotype game all day. Your friends have PhDs. Are they going to be teachers? Aren't teachers the ones that molest kids the most out of any society? I hope they don't go anywhere near grade school. Like, you can play the stereotype game all you want. But it doesn't get us anywhere unless we want to appeal to facts and fiction. Like, there are a whole bunch of parts of the conservative mindset towards approaching female sexuality that, in my opinion, make you insanely mentally unstable. Right?
Excuse me, sir. I'm all about women getting their backs broken by their husbands. I don't know what you're talking about.
You think that it's a violation of the sanctity of life to use a surrogate fucking womb? That's an insane.
But that doesn't have to do anything about a G-spot orgasm between a man and his wife.
It doesn't matter. Okay, I'm just saying that like you can't keep deriding and writing off sex workers when you yourself inhabit a whole bunch of areas that a lot of people, I think, could with compelling argumentation say are fucking insane. It's not fair to just claim like mentally insane women that are doing sex work. I know all these PhD women that blah 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 blah. Like that's great, but that doesn't speak to like the broader reality of what's going on.
Yeah, but not sex positive. I'm anti-promiscuity and I'm anti-women commodifying their bodies because it's going to have implications for them later. Nobody buys mature porn, okay? Like, I worked at a couple store for a year. Nobody buys that. The sun sets on that one day. What life are you going to be left with once you have wrinkles in your
That's a major
industry?
industry. MILF porn is in
not
the
MILF.
top
I said
three
mature.
categories.
Mature. Not popular, not gonzo, not MILF. Mature.
What life does every single male athlete have after their 20s or 30s? Like, I mean, there are some industries that we partake in that have ultra high risk to the body or reputation, and you can't do them forever. But the compensation is usually there for it. Women that are really successful in porn are compensated 20x more than they would be working as a barista at Starbucks. Same thing with men that endure CTE for football, or men that endure a lot of brain injuries for boxing or MMA. But I mean, like, people ought to be allowed to choose those careers if they want to, unless you have a really compelling reason for them not to. And an 11-year-old might look at porn sometimes as not a compelling reason.
Well, no, it's a compelling reason to try to stop that, right?
No,
it's not a compelling reason not to work in the industry at all. It might be a compelling reason to like restrict children from electronic devices. But like I think TikTok is more harmful for children than porn. I would bet my life on that. 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. I would rather that like my son get caught like fucking looking at porn than he's on TikTok for 12 hours a fucking day, glued to a fucking phone. I would bet my life on that it has more negative outcomes for children to be addicted to scrolling content than seeing a dick or a vagina, which children have been hunting down in Target and Sears catalogs or in Playboy magazines buried under the fucking bed since the dawn
National
of whenever porn is. Yeah, like this is always.
I'm not going to deny.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to deny that Chinese spyware is bad. TikTok is bad, and I would say
Instagram Reels.
Yeah. I agree. Keep kids off the phones or whatever. But I do think there's something uniquely bad here when we're talking about exposing children to pornography, to sexuality at that young age.
I don't think anybody here is looking to expose children to pornography at a young age.
Real quick, we gotta let Lactoid have a say, then you can respond. Lactoid, please finish.
I'm just saying it's tolerating it. It would be similar to like if a bar in your local neighborhood was like selling beer to 11-year-olds, and you go into them and you're like, who's going to want to work at that bar? When you work at that bar, you're somewhat contributing to the problem, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, children are gonna look, bro. I remember playing StarCraft Brood War maps when I was 12, where you drew Kerrigan naked on the fucking mini map. It was called Kerrigan Naked. Like, kids are always gonna be this idea that like it's uniquely damaging or whatever. Like, little boys touch their penises when they're 6 months old. Like, kids are. I know it sucks and it's weird to think about, but kids explore their sexuality at really early ages. I don't think porn is like uniquely damaging to a person's mind, where it's like, oh my fucking god, my 12-year-old saw porn.
Okay.
I think porn. One last point. I do think porn is uniquely damaging. And I also don't like the argument of, well, kids are going to be kids and get around the rules anyway, because the reality, like, we could use that argument for any kind of age gates that we have. Well, why cap bars at 21? Because some kid might sneak in with a fake ID. No, you like want to first of all demonstrate to like society that it's not good to do this, but also like weed out as many kids as possible, because we don't want kids engaging in this behavior. Pornography is not good for people generally, and it's definitely not good for children, especially when you're 12 or 11.
Your own example is really flawed, because by that same logic, because an 11-year-old or 12-year-old kid could get access to somebody's liquor cabinet and drink that we shouldn't at all have alcohol accessible in our houses. Like, that's
bukkake compared to whiskey.
No,
bukkake compared to whiskey.
Whiskey is worse for you.
Yeah,
Whiskey actually destroys your fucking like life when you're a child. Like, it can destroy your brain and your development. Yeah.
Both are bad.
This is a false.
No, not both are bad.
This is a false analogy, though.
Your analogy was that nobody should participate in pornography or sex work because a child might see it.
Hey, everyone, all of you, no one can hear you when you're all talking. I like this energy, but you got to go one at a time. Madam Genevieve, finish your point, then you can respond to Destiny can go, and we can get crazy again. Go ahead.
Your argument that nobody should participate in sex work, pornography, the adult industry, because an 11-year-old might see it, absolutely can apply to alcohol or any other age-restricted item. Like, that's faulty logic.
Okay, so
I mean, I would just ethically, as an adult, right? It's like, because it's like the drug dealer thing. Okay, like, are you comfortable?
The dominant energy. I know. I'm too submissive.
Oh, I mean, I haven't really even been talking much about this particular subject, but it's just, do you want to like add to a problem, or would you prefer to take away from it? I'm not going to act like hoes are going to be abolished overnight. Like, that's not going to happen. There's always going to be broken homes. We can't do any, it is what it is, right? But
I'm just curious for you two. For Allie Lecter, would you rather catch your kid, you find out that your kid has been addicted to alcohol for a year at 12, or addicted to porn at 12?
These are still both really stupid examples.
I'm just kidding. It's not. They're not stupid because kids
They're
can
too
find and get addicted to
age-related.
and kids can find and get addicted to alcohol. They
Well,
kids
no,
can
you're right. I agree. Like alcohol is worse, especially for like young people. But here's here's where the analogy was misunderstood, right? So it's not like, well, you shouldn't like. I'm not banning the sale of alcohol because some kid like might get into a liquor cabinet. In the same way, I'm not like advocating for banning pornography because like somebody might get their age verified and then let some underage kid like watch pornography. What I'm saying is like there's a standard here of, is the industry even setting a standard of like keeping people out, specifically children who shouldn't be engaging in this at all. The pornography industry does a terrible job at doing this in ways that the liquor industry honestly is a little bit better, right? You got to be 21. You got to show a state ID if you buy liquor, if you go to a bar, right? They're actually setting like restrictions. Like, we don't want kids to do this because we recognize it's bad. But with the pornography industry, there's not that same level of appreciation of how bad it is for young minds.
We can actually, if we all as a society were better at paying for our porn, we would have much better control over who is seeing it. The problem is there's all this free porn everywhere that kids are able to access without any verification. On anything that has a paywall, you do generally have to verify.
Well, you can make verification like even for free, and not let people like, or I guess not mandate that people are able to like profit off of the weakness of men, right? Because that's what it is when you're making money off sex work.
They have
so you're looking to have more regulations around age verification. That's really your issue here. Okay, cool. I also don't.
That's
think
one of the issues.
Viewing porn.
Good. And until that happens, people in the porn industry are contributing to children like watching this.
Participating in an adult activity because a child might stumble across it you think should be banned. That's how we come full circle to the alcohol thing.
Yeah, and if you're having sex in your house and there's a kid walking around, you should probably close the door, lock the door, take some kind of effort to make sure they don't come in and see you. It seems to make sense to me. The porn sites don't.
I'm not denying that we should take reasonable actions to limit exposure, but you're seeming to claim that the entire industry should be done away with or punished, and I think that's ridiculous.
Okay. Well, gang, I want to respect everyone's time here. I know I said 6 to 8, and I want to kind of hold to that. We are going to have call-ins after this. You are all welcome to stay. I know there's some people who've been really wanting in to sound off. So if you can stay, I'd encourage you to do so. If you can't, I understand. But I want to give everyone here a chance to have a closing shout out, tell people where they can find you, if they liked your takes or they hated your takes, where can they talk to you at, right? And I want to give everyone a chance to do that. And then we're gonna start here with Madam Genevieve. Actually, I'm gonna work our way around.
Awesome, because I do have to go. I have to go sell dildos and play dress up with strippers at 6 o'clock Pacific time here. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm really glad to have been a part of it. If you want to see more of my degenerate takes, you can find me on Twitter at Madam Genevieve. And I also do stream on Twitch. So I hope to see you guys there.
All right, check her out. Where can they find you at Twitch? Twitch.tv/Madam Genevieve, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks for being here. Allie, please.
So you can find me at RealFemSapien on pretty much every platform out there. I have a Substack as well. It's mostly a girl game because I don't think women are being taught how to attract and keep the men that they want or desire. So I am trying to assist women on that front. If you would like to capitalize on, setting yourself up for, future romantic success, I don't have all the answers, but I talk to women who've been married like 20, 30 plus years. I go out and I find these women who can give you guys the answers. So if that's something that's up your alley and you're curious about traditional values, you can check out my platforms.
Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back too, because I think you were excellent content, and we'll talk about that later. Next up, Destiny, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me at Instagram.com/Destiny or YouTube.com/Destiny.
There he is, gang. Go give him a follow. He's a great guy. Next up, Lactoid, please.
If you like my takes, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch and YouTube and Twitter. Thanks.
Okay, so for those of you who must go, bid the affair farewell. Thank you again for coming. Gang, if you liked my content and you're watching this show, hit the like button. That'll help me. If you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please do so. For those of you watching on other streams, my YouTube is youtube.com/@WhickTV. You could also find me where I do most of my things on Twitch at twitch.tv/WhickTV. We have conversations like this all the time. We have call-in shows. It's fun. It's great. And yeah, if you want to be involved in one of these shows, become part of my community, and you can have that opportunity as well. For now, we're going to open it up to call-ins. Madam Genevieve, I know you have to go.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Oh, good night.
Bye.
Okay, Lime, did you have a question for anyone here?
I was talking to Destiny about the manhood thing. I think that the traits that women typically look for men, older, taller, making more money, is that they want the man to be
Just
a protector.
Real quick, if I remember, do you have a question or is this a statement?
Well, I was just challenging his view on that the man. Yeah, I think that that's either consciously or subconsciously, they do want the man to be that protector. I don't think that has just gone away just because we live in our modern society. I think it is deeper than just they're making more money.
I mean, yeah, if you want to feel that way, then you can feel that way. But you're just sending men down a road of getting perpetually fucked. The reality is that just being a protector is not going to be enough to get any woman in a relationship with you, because nobody's realistically making selections like that. There's going to be
women are looking for older, taller men that make more money.
When you say women are looking for taller men, you're describing 99% of men are taller than most women. So men are already typically taller than women. So I don't know what that means. The average male is 5'9", and the average woman is 5'4". So
but it's that they want that. It's not that if a guy came up to them who was shorter than them, they would say, "No, I don't want you because I decided."
That might be the case. And if a guy came up to you with one leg, yeah, you probably also wouldn't want that guy.
You compare one leg. Come on,
because the chance of being shorter than a woman are probably pretty low. I imagine it's probably 10% of guys or whatever, or lower.
No, it's nowhere near that.
Are shorter than the average woman?
Well, the average man is 5'9" or 5'10" or 5'9.5". Hispanics are bringing us down based. But it's 5'9" or around there. And the average woman is 5'4". You're multiple deviations off the normal male height to be shorter than the average woman. So when you say a woman is looking for a taller guy, that's going to be true of almost all men. That's just by
no, I think what he meant is not taller as compared to the woman. Obviously, I mean, that's a big part of it, but just taller, the taller the better, over 6 foot. A lot of women prefer
maybe,
that.
But I mean, same thing for guys. The bigger the boob, the better. The better the pussy, the deeper the throat. I mean,
and there's reasons for that.
Well, it's also just not entirely true, though, right? Because the majority of people are within an inch of their partner's height.
The majority of people are going to be in the majority of these qualifying factors. People might gravitate towards higher things if they could, but that's going to be true of literally everybody. But if you're a guy and you're 5'9" and you think you're not getting a woman because you're not tall enough or because you're not making enough money, chances are there are other things in your control that you could definitely make improvements on that are going to get you in that area. If you're not 6 foot, it's not like the world is over. It's just not the case.
Yeah,
but that's not what I said. I said that women want these things. I'm not saying if you're a guy and you're not taller than her, you can't get her. I'm saying the reason that women want these things because they want the man to be the protector role.
Yeah,
that's what.
But women don't want taller and taller and taller and taller and taller men. They want a man that's taller than she is. And what Destiny said is that most men are taller than most women. So the only variable that maybe isn't understood here is what is the mode height of women. What is the most common height of women as opposed to the average?
Wait, you're saying that a woman's not gonna, your average woman's not gonna have any preference between if she's 5'8", a 5'9" man, or a 6'2" man?
So there's diminishing returns. There's diminishing returns, right? So after you're taller than a woman, how much more taller than you are than her means very little, and there's other variables she's going to care about way more, which is why almost everybody statistically is within an inch or two of the height of their partner.
But there still is returns though, up to maybe diminishing, but there's still returns, which indicates that they have a preference for that to some extent.
Yeah, but when you guys say preference, the problem is that when you guys speak of preferences, you make these sound like they're massive preferences that are make or breaks for dating. All else equal, if a woman could have a 5'10" guy or a 6 foot guy, all else equal, she'd probably gravitate towards a 6 foot guy, sure. But in terms of what are they selecting for dating, height is probably not even in the top 5 or 10. Maybe for fucking, sure. But there's gonna be a band that you can fall within. If you're at least 2 to 3 inches taller than the woman, you're probably fine.
But you're already grading it, giving them 2 or 3 inches taller than her.
I also want to point out height is one factor.
The average man is 4 inches taller than the average woman.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 4 inches is a pretty significant amount. But sure, you're taking one element, but what he's saying is that you're taking there's a bigger pie of like reasons why women are attracted to men. And so like height's one of them. But like if you're tall, if you're wealthy, if you're like really physically fit and like muscular, like yeah, maybe each of these represents a relatively small percentage, but combined, you're going to be way at an advantage than a man who doesn't have these things.
Yeah, if you're taller, wealthier, stronger, more handsome, yeah, of course. If you stack enough of these things,
yeah, of course.
Who's denying that? Wait, what?
But almost no.
So there's a reason why all these things are like make up a part of the pie, and that's what he's trying to say. Like there's like fundamental reasons why, like yeah, if you just look at height, it's not just height, but all of these things combined are all based on like kind of foundational like reasons and like perceptions of men being the provider, men being the protector, and as they can fill those requirements more and more, they're just more successful.
But almost nobody is all of these things more than
and the
everyone.
problem is you guys
I am.
The problem is that you guys are holding up this ideal of like a very tall, very wealthy, very handsome man. That's like such a minority of society. Like most men are going to be tall enough to fit that role. Most men are going to be strong enough to fit that role. Most men are going to be, probably because men still tend to out-earn women, are going to be fitting that role. Like these aren't the big things that you probably need to focus on as a man. This is the problem with the red pill ideology, is it's sending men down the wrong path. The average man is hitting most of these things with very little effort. The average man is taller, stronger, whatever, probably looks decent enough for a woman. There are other parts of their life that they're not filling that hole in. And the idea that you just need to be more tall, more masculine, more strong, more wealthy, only like 1% of men are going to be such outliers there that they're going to be able to get a girl on one of those traits.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like, it's not, the red pill is just what socially maladjusted men find. Like what you're saying is true, but they're not going to hear it. I've had this point multiple times on my platforms. The men that want to understand it, they'll get it. But the men that just don't want to hear it and want to blame the world for why they can't get a woman, they're just going to keep that thought in their mind.
Yeah.
Hold
on. What's being overlooked here, what is absolutely being overlooked here with that red pill ideology is that entire thing, to me as a woman, feels like a complete cope of hating the men who are 6 foot rich, all of the above, and this ideal man that's such a small minority. To me, it just looks like you absolutely despise that guy. And I'm personally happy that that guy is getting what he wants. My concern is that we're all getting what we want as best as we can, as long as it's something that's good for everyone. And one of the things that keeps getting overlooked, and was overlooked in this panel too, is that the vast majority of women have reported that they like men who have something that men are saying is female, nurturing. We like men that are good with pets and good with children. We absolutely adore it. And every single survey, we keep saying it. And it's like everybody's ignoring us and going, oh, they just made that up or something. That's something we actually want from men. And that would be considered somewhat feminine, would it not? We want men who like kids, who like animals, who like pets. Like, look at how many more these men who have dogs in their profile pictures, look how much more they're favored, because we know that you're a nice person and that you like, people or anybody who's vulnerable and needs our help. So why are we overlooking that?
So I think the reason why it often gets overlooked is because like that advice was given to men for a while as well. And the problem is that if men only embody those things, it also falls flat, because it seems that a lot of women seem to require a minimum level of masculinity before they have the feminine traits, right? So like the feminine traits are also what they want in a partner. They want a guy who seems to embody both of these things. The problem is that if you only give them the advice of like be more feminine, a lot of men like don't have these masculine role models, and they're like struggling to even like have a conception of masculinity in themselves, that they're focusing on the one, because it does seem to be the case that like a lot of like really sweet, soft guys tend to like fall pretty flat with women because they don't have like the necessary prerequisite of like masculinity.
I don't think the issue here is because people keep saying that. I don't agree with that the problem is men are too feminized, because then what we mean when we say that is people are saying feminized implies all of these horrible, weak personality traits. When I look at like the average guy that society would consider like feminized, it's not like the guy is like very emotional and he might talk with a little lisp and he's kind of gay, blah, blah, blah. It's usually a guy that's like emotional wreck. And that's not a feminine trait either. Like an ultra feminized guy that's having problems with women probably embodies a lot of traits that women that have problems with men have. A guy that's overly emotional, that is completely and totally unstable, that can't have healthy relationships or conversations, that like gets too obsessed or not obsessed or detached with all these different things. These are not like embracing his femininity too much. It's just being a train wreck.
Could we
you
rephrase?
You can just say that's like excessively feminine behavior, though.
Could we? No, it's not excessively feminine, because any woman that inhabits those traits, usually if you think of like really feminine stuff, you'd think like these are positives. But I don't want a woman that's at all in that direction of being like super unstable. Like
right. But I want to point out, but my thing that I'm pointing out though is just that what we're doing here is we are saying what masculinity is, and it seems like we have intentionally, when it comes to red pill ideology, we have intentionally deleted fatherhood, which is a massive portion of manhood and our understanding of men. So it's obviously you can be a man without being a father. You can be a woman without being a mother. My point does remain, though, that we don't ever want to be in a position where fatherhood or traits that women have consistently said they want are being completely deleted from the discussion over some weird little cope that it begins to just target happy men who happen to have the luck of the draw genetically, and now we're going to hate on them. Like, that's stupid. I don't understand that at all.
So I feel like we can completely just like get away from this problem of diction with feminized men and just swap it to emasculate men. Like, there's nothing masculine about you. It's like if we say masculinity is like having emotional control and being able to handle your shit and yada yada yada, because women can do all of that, and we can call it masculine just for like ease of access or whatever. If you have nothing masculine about you, you're a mess. You have no order. You have no control. It's like the yin and yang. So is it possible to just use that diction instead of feminized, emasculate?
I think you can, but the issue then is that like people, I get so triggered when people gender some things that are just so like obviously like these are your fun. Like for instance, we say like my man is so masculine, like he washes his ass in the shower. Like no, you would say like it's basic hygiene that everybody should have, female and male. That's not a masculine trait to have to brush your teeth in the morning, right? But then people will say things like, oh yeah, like he was very feminine and that he was like crying or an emotional wreck every time I saw him. I was like, I don't want a woman that's like that. I don't think anybody wants a woman that's like crying and screaming all the time. So it's just weird when we talk about that in terms of masculine or emasculine. It's more, there's got to be like fundamental things that most people have to have together in life. And then we could talk about like masculine or feminine traits past that. But like a failure to be just a basic functioning human being, to call that like emasculating or unfeminine is just very strange to me, I think.
So do you just not think that there are masculine and feminine things though?
They're absolutely masculine and feminine things.
Okay.
Well, I think a metric that's often
so
missing from this conversation is maturity, right? Like a lot of things that we're talking about is like maturity or immaturity. I think like when it comes to things like emotional, like sensitivity and like expression, I think we still do typically categorize that as a like femme thing, in large part because of like we'll often see like femme people that are more willing to express their emotions, not because I think it's like obviously a biological thing. I think a lot of like trans women would even report this, like when they start going on things like estrogen and progesterone, they start experiencing like heightened like volatility, particularly with negative emotions. So they experience a lot like greater intensity levels of sadness, but like a lot less anger, whereas like anger seems to oftentimes be a way that like more often masculinely emotions expressed. But I would say like in either case, if you're a dysregulated emotional person, you're being a little boy or a little girl. You're not really being like a man or woman necessarily.
I want to give space for Allie here, and I just want to lime mashed potatoes. We're gonna move you out and room for someone else cycling. But thank you for being here.
And I can head out too. I just have one question for Allie when she's finished.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I was going to respond to some of the things you said. Okay. So, number one, acting childish would imply like a concept of neoteny, which seems to only be attractive in women. That's why it's more accepted when women are emotionally dysregulated. Also, we're kind of given a pass because of our hormonal cycle. Men can be emotionally dysregulated as well. But I would think that that is probably why it's attributed as like a feminine quality. I disagree with that. I think if you act childish, you act childish. Aside from that, when we're talking about like red pill ideology, I'm probably the one person who's like talked to majority of these red pill content creators, not just online, but like behind the scenes, and I've met them in real life. So it's like the libertarian strategy for sex. Okay. There's like no morals. There's nothing. It's just a sexual mating strategy for men. That's why you don't see a lot of fatherhood discussed. However, if you go look at old blogs, because the manosphere is like 20 plus years old. If you go look at old blogs, there is content on fatherhood and how to maintain frame as a father and a leader of a household. And I have like a lot of access to some of these things if anyone's curious. But that's why you don't see an emphasis on fatherhood. Aside from that, reproduction rates are what they are. 50.1% of women are childless by age 30 in the UK. If we want to see more of an emphasis on fatherhood, we probably need to start having more babies. As for like, there's feminine traits and masculine traits. These are things that have shown up in all cultures, through all history, through all religions. So, and they're just gendered, and that's okay. And we all have it within us. That is what I would say.
The sermon part aside, though, for me, one of the most appalling things that I saw today was you did bring. I mean, good job on bringing the woman hate with the tough titty to Jen, and oncology and wanting to have children. I mean, good job there. But I want to actually focus on the man hate, because something that you said about being wet when a woman sees a man could die for her is one of the most disgusting and heinous things I think I've ever heard in my life. I don't know about you, but I actually love men enough. I want them to be alive. I can't actually love a corpse. Okay. I don't know why in the world.
Keyword willing.
Physically, I don't know why in the world you would get physically turned on and tell that to the public that your husband could die. Bitch, he's your man. Do you not give a shit about it? And
keyword
then
willing.
And then when you turn around and you said that maybe you can have a son who will protect you. I mean, if there's a bear coming at you, you're going to throw your baby infant boy in front of it. Like, what the men are not disposable shits. What the
fuck? Well, I don't know if that was a question. Stab
question. Being a cunt.
Yeah, why would you dispose of your man? Where is that man hate coming from?
Willing. Keyword willing. Willing to. Willing to.
Oh, can you just like mute her or something? Like, I can't even respond.
We're gonna,
like what?
Yeah, I'm cycling out right after this.
I want to address something she said. Well, first of all, I
was the one that was addressed, and I was the one that got cursed out. So you might want to wait a minute or two. Okay, so in any case, basically, there are just things that are attractive in men: being physically strong and being capable of ending an aggressor's life. That's it. Would I throw my baby son in the way of a bear? That's honestly retarded. I don't know how you get from point A to point B. Also, I'm pregnant. I don't know anyone else who's married and pregnant on this panel. So maybe that's why you're so dysfunctional and online calling into a panel right now. Maybe you just suck.
You dumb cunt. I have kids. So the point remains.
Oh, I'm sorry for them because their mom is nuts.
No, the point continues to remain that you actually said that women get wet at the thought of their husbands dying for them.
No, I don't think I said that. I think MMA fighters are hot and they make a lot of women drip. That's what I think.
She said men who are willing to engage in self-sacrificial roles are attractive to women, not men who literally are killing themselves.
Men dying are women. Men dying are not hot to women. I'm sorry.
Bro, stop. Please just stop. You want soldiers that are willing to die. You need to be willing to die to fight a war, right? The army doesn't want the soldiers to die, but they need to be willing, right?
Sure, I was one. Thanks.
Stabby?
The fuck does that mean?
Thank you for calling in.
She was a soldier. That's what she said.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Big
Thank
deal.
you for your service.
No,
were you willing to die?
Stabby? No.
Yep.
We got some soldiers.
That made you a good soldier.
All right, guys.
Later. Bye-bye.
All right, my husband breaks my back regularly. It's fabulous. I don't know about anybody else. I'm having what the hell?
Okay, 10 flicks, send in one more.